Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I'm going to be doing a review of The Price of Spring by Daniel Abraham. This is the fourth book in the Long Price Quartet and it was a wonderful ending to an absolutely incredible quartet. My experience of reading these books has been really interesting. It's the first time that I've ever read books generally apart. I normally read series in one go, and this was the first time where I generally read kind of a book a month. I ended up reading books 3 and 4 very close together because I had to know what happened at the end of the series. But books 1, 2, and 3 I read over kind of consecutive months. And I honestly think that's the best way to read these books, because I think you should let the book sit with you for a while and then read the next book, because these books are so layered, they're so thematic, they're so character driven, and I think you can really enjoy them the most if you read them separately. Reading books 3 and 4, I do think maybe I should have left a bit more time between the two, because book 3 is very fast paced compared to the other two books, and book 4 is a lot more slower paced, especially the start. So without further ado, let's just jump into what I really liked about it and what I didn't like about it. What I loved about this book, I loved the fact that everything that we've experienced in books 1 to 3 has ended in this huge culmination of different aspects coming together. And you know, the ending, I read the last chapter a couple of times and it's just chef's kiss. You know, it's the ending that I wanted for the characters that we had. I think there are certain things that are kind of bittersweet about the ending. There's certain characters like Marty who could just kind of gets forgotten, and that's exactly what he didn't want. He wanted to impress people. He wanted to be a great poet, and he wanted to fulfill this destiny that he wasn't really ever in a position to fulfill, if that makes sense. We kind of lose sight of him towards the end of the book. I mean, it's very sad, the last conversation that Ota and Marty have together. You see that their relationship really is not redeemable in any way, and that these two characters, whilst there are certain aspects of them that are the same from books 1, 2, and 3, they have changed in ways that I don't think either one of them or any of us as the reader could have expected. And I just think it's fascinating to see his arc get resolved in the way that it gets resolved. I'm not going to mention any major spoilers. There will obviously be minor spoilers for the previous books, but just be aware of that going into this. My favourite character throughout this entire series has been Ota. I love Ota's character. I love his arc. He is a great example of somebody who should be leader but just doesn't want to be. And I love those types of characters. And by the end of it, he kind of realizes that he kind of has to do it, even though he doesn't like it. There's this one bit where he mentions being emperor is like being the most honored slave in the world. If you've ever been in a leadership position, you can probably sympathize with that statement. You are often at the whims of the people that you serve and that you work with and that you partner with. And Abraham captures it so well in that sentence alone, and I loved it. With Ota, we see him feel very frustrated with the people around him and the way that things are run, and the kind of the fact that, you know, families are warring and there's politics and there's intrigue. Like, he hates that. I love seeing him develop from that young man that we see at the beginning of book 1 all the way up until the end of book 4. I think his arc was flawlessly done, and I think Ota definitely has been added to, you know, some of my top fantasy protagonists of all time. Like, absolutely wonderful character. The other character that I really enjoyed was Didnt. I really enjoyed her in book 2. I really wanted her to be in book 3, but obviously she wasn't. But then she's in book 4 and I was so happy. I saw her name on the page and I was like, yes, Didnt is back. And it's obviously going to be a redemption arc, and it is a redemption arc, and it was done really well. And it wasn't done at the cost of her character, because she's still sneaky, she's still sly, but she is using that for the greater good. And I really liked her relationship with Ota. I really liked their conversations, and I just thought it was really well done. I think Abraham writes female characters like nobody else at the time of the filming of this video. He writes female characters absolutely wonderfully, and one of the things that I've mentioned before is he writes female friendships extremely well as well. I really loved that character, and I just thought she was done exceptionally well. And as a result of that, she is also now in my favourite characters in fantasy list for sure. There was one character that we really feel the loss of in this book as well, and that is Kian. Kian is Ota's wife, his lover. She is the mother of his children. We find out that she has passed away between books 3 and 4, and you really feel that sense of loss from Ota, and you really feel it. Like, you feel her absence, you feel his sense of loss and remorse, and it's just really sad. Like, and you also feel the loss of another character, Nait, which is his other son, and you feel that more from the perspective of Marty though, which is really interesting, because even though he is biologically the son of Ota, really his father was Marty, and you really feel that from Marty's perspective. And it's really tragic. It's really, really tragic that these two characters have led these men to rethink certain aspects of their life, and they're such pillars of their lives as well, and you really feel that. And it's really sad. The other things that Abraham does really well is, you know, I've said this before, his works are very thematic. There's topics of revenge and forgiveness, resentment, self-loathing. You know, all of these things obviously interrelate in some way, shape or form. I love the way that Abraham subtly inputs that into the book. It never feels like, oh yes, this is revenge, and oh yes, this is a feeling of like overwhelming forgiveness. Like, it's never done that way. And I really appreciate that. I much prefer subtle thematic work than like thematic work that just like slaps you in the face. I just thought he did it really well. I really like particular that theme of revenge versus forgiveness. Like, do you put your ego to the side, essentially? Because I do think that's what a lot of revenge is about, is ultimately ego. If we're gonna really pull it down to one thing, it's ultimately ego. Are you going to put your ego to the one side, and are you going to move forward for the greater good of your relationship with that person, your own mental health as well? Revenge is a horrible thing. It can lead you to make some very bad decisions. And forgiveness, you know, can often be seen as a weakness, but if anything, it's the thing that requires the most amount of strength, because you have to accept that something happened, and you have to be willing to put that to the side. And that is incredibly hard for humans to do. And I think when we get those interactions between Ota and Marty, you know, you see these two people that have grown together, but apart for a lot of it, and you see them finally coming back together, and you just see how their relationship is teetering on those kind of two sides of the spectrum from the perspective of both of these characters. You also see that with Idan and Ota's relationship as well, in particular, which I really enjoyed. I really love like brother-sister dynamics. I have two brothers myself, so I like seeing that written on the page, and I just really appreciated it. I really liked their sibling relationship, even though they obviously have a very difficult past to contend with. The thing I really liked about their relationship in particular is that you realise they come to an understanding. I love that. I just love it, and I was here for it, and I think Abraham did an excellent job. The last thing I will mention that I loved the last chapter. The last chapter, I reread it a couple of times, and I just think it's so beautiful. I think it's such a wonderful way to end the quartet. Very rarely do I really love the ending of a story, and like, this is one of those cases where I'm very happy to say that is the case. I thought it was just excellently done, and I don't want to mention anything about it because I feel like it's one of those things that you should experience for yourself, and you should go into it not knowing anything about it, but just take my word for it. It's really well done. It's really well executed. I feel like there could be a way for him to be in this world again if he wanted to follow some other characters. I don't know if that's in his mind, but there's definitely that option. But I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was really solid. What I didn't like about it. So, as I mentioned, I read this book after An Autumn War, and An Autumn War for me was perfect. I love the pacing. I love the fact that it was like intense. There were 2 chapters in that book that I just were perfect chapters for me. Coming off the back of that and just loving it so much, and then going into Price of Spring, it was just like, it was a bit of a shift, and I do feel like maybe I should have left more time between books 3 and 4. As I said, I generally read them consecutively each month, but this time I waited like 2 or 3 days, and then I read it. I started reading it, and I should have, I think, waited for more time, but I just really wanted to know what happened, and I don't regret it. But anyway, it was just really slow. Like, the first like 150 pages was just really slow, and they felt a little bit anticlimactic in a way. But what Abraham was doing was setting the scene, obviously, for the kind of main crescendo of the book, which I understand. But like I said, just coming off the back of book 3 and then going into that, it just felt a little bit off for me. It is what it is. It's fine. That was pretty much the only thing that I didn't like about it, is just the fact that it was very slowly paced compared to the previous book. But again, I think that's obviously dependent on what you like and how you like your pacing as well. So I ended up giving this book a 4.5 stars. For me, it was actually the weakest of the quartet, in the sense that because it was very slowly paced and because it just felt like a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of a lull after book 3. That's why I ended up giving it 4.5. So where I'm sitting at right now, book 1 is a 4.5, book 2 is a 4.75, though I am actually going to move it up to a 5 because book 2 still sticks with me a lot. Book 3 is obviously a 5, and then book 4 is a 4.5. I might actually end up moving book 1 to a 4.75 because I think book 1 is better than book 4, in my opinion. A lot of people will disagree with me because obviously you see kind of everything come together and you see the amount of foresight that Abraham had. But like I said, the pacing thing was quite a big issue for me in the first part of the book. So for me, it's got to be book 3, book 2, book 1, book 4. That's my order. But I loved it. Excellent series. I'm going to be reading more Abraham for sure. I think I'll be reading the Dagger and Coin series next, and then Age of Ash probably once that's completed. But I'm excited to read more. Let me know if you've read this quartet. Absolutely wonderful. Strongly recommend it. I think overall I would give this quartet like a 4.75, maybe even a 5. I just think it's wonderful. Abraham is definitely becoming a new favorite author of mine. I just need to read more of his books to really justify that. But like I said, let me know if you've read it. Let's chat about it. Absolutely incredible book. I strongly recommend it. That being said, I will see you all in the next video. Stay safe, take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.